Hi, students.
Good morning, sir.
I'm Shweta. Okay. So yesterday, I think we started discussing about the quaternary fossils, right? So tertiary and quaternary. We briefly went through tertiary fossils and started with quaternary fossils. And in 1.6a, we had begun already starting about Australopithecus, correct? And I think we stopped in the middle related to that. Like Paranthropus, we were briefly talking about. So let me start with the, excuse me. This image here. So what are we talking about? Like yesterday, we discussed about different periods and epochs in them. Our focus is on this part. Okay. So our focus is on the Pleistocene, Holocene part, but you notice that some of the fossils that we are talking about come from Pliocene area. So we are going from bit of Pliocene area and forward. So because quaternary fossil, the quaternary period begins from about 1.8 million years ago. But you notice that many of the species that we are talking about, like if you talk about Africanus or Afarensis, Australopithecus, they are from this era. You notice that they are from the Pliocene period. They are from Pliocene epoch specifically. So quaternary, this is tertiary period. So basically there's bit of overlap, you notice here. So starting with the Pliocene, all those things that we've started discussing yesterday, Australopithecus, these are all Australopithecus, other Afarensis, Africanus, Gurhi, Ethiopias. So these are all part of the Pliocene area. So they're not exactly quaternary. Okay. So keep that in mind. So we are talking about part of the tertiary area and then slowly we move into the quaternary area. Okay. So, and also the goal of this part is understanding a couple of things. What are the characteristics of specifically mentioned species in the syllabus? What are the characteristics? Where are they found? Geographically, where are they found? I'm going to give you an idea on that. And how are they connected to the previous one? So how do we place them in phylogenetic tree? So these are all what we are actually kind of focusing on. So yesterday we talked about this quaternary period. I gave a brief idea approximately on Australopithecus, Homo habilis, Homo erectus, Neanderthals, and Homo sapiens. Okay, and I briefly showed you about idea of how to draw this type of diagrams. Skulls especially, these are simple skulls that you can use in order to draw the diagrams. Okay, and teeth, you can follow this type of approach of showing how the canines are and the size of the teeth relatively. Okay, and also briefly talked about this overall like a order of who came when. I'm also going to show you one more informative image for that as we move forward. So Australopithecus we talked about is a more ape-like because we still don't use the genera Homo. We use the genera Australopithecus, right? Because they're mostly found in the South African region and they're more ape-like. That is why still we use the suffix pithecus. This slightly changes as we move on. Okay. And I was also telling you about different places, a lot of different places in South Africa and East Africa. They found fossils. Okay, some of the names you have to remember, like Lucy. Lucy later called Australopithecus afarensis. This was found in eastern Ethiopia in 1974. So you can cite Lucy, and if you can remember, maybe one like this Tong, Australopithecus afarensis. One or two you can mention. But overall talk about mostly these fossils, several fossils found in South Africa and East Africa. Right. And within Australopithecus, there seem to be one genus, but two species. There's a debate on this. Okay, I think once a question came to discuss about the phylogenetic position and the debate on phylogenetic position of the Australopithecus. Okay, first I'll provide you this information about the second species, that is robustus, and then we'll talk about the phylogenetic confusion related to this. comment briefly on the phylogenetic position of Australopithecus. A 10-marker question came in 2012. I'll tell you briefly about the deal about Australopithecus phylogenetic position. There's a little bit of debate on this. That must be the reason why they asked about it. Okay, so within Australopithecus, we have Australopithecus africanus. So this is a kind of a slender form. This is called also called gracile form or slender form. And another one is robustus. So bit heavier humans, okay, or if you can call humans or our human ancestors, and bit leaner, okay, ancestors. So like that, Africanus, robustus. But the genera is same, Australopithecus, Australopithecus. But there were no clear consensus on this. Not everybody believed that they belong to the same genera. Okay, let's see what are the differences. I think we talked about afferences. So bit of short, weight-wise, and few ape-like features like the especially face could be seen here. I'll give you a bit of comparison on this. Right, so this is probably a better place, better way of writing this. So Australopithecus africanus, Australopithecus robustus. So what are the key differences for these two species? If you see the characters height-wise, as I was talking about, approximately 1.1 went up to about 1.4 meters if you consider other fossils. So very much like what we have seen with the Lucy, right? Australopithecus robustus was slightly tall or an average slightly tall, otherwise overall in the same range, 1.2 to 1.4. But build-wise, so Australopithecus africanus was about 30 to 60 kg, whereas robustus were about 48 to 80 kg. Supposed to read 80 kg. Okay, so a bit heavier on the side, as you see it. Physique-wise, these Australopithecus africanus was lightly built. They have long arms, more human-like features. Of course, not completely human, otherwise they would have called them Homo. They're not. Okay, and less sexual dimorphism, meaning less difference between females and males. So whereas Australopithecus robustus, they're heavily built, they have relatively long arms, okay, very much like them, and marked sexual dimorphism. They have bit more distinction between males and females. So overall, they are on the same range of height, but on average slightly taller, and they are heavier compared to the Australopithecus africanus. Okay, more sexual dimorphism. Right? These people are lightly built, these people are more heavy built. That is what adding up to the weight differences that we are seeing here. In addition to that, there appears to be a bit of increase in the brain capacity as well, because Australopithecus africanus was showing about 400 to 500 cc. I'll also show you an image to roughly remember how brain size has increased in these fossils over a period of time. So here it is 400 to 500 cc, but it slightly went up to 410 to 500. So how far are they? We are about 1300 plus, right? We are about 1300 plus. So about 1/3 of the size of our brain was seen in them. So they definitely are not evolved as we are, correct? So they are more ancestral to us. Okay, like that, you can see these are the key differences between robustus and africanus. Few other differences that were noted here, like if you see the skull wise, low, flat forehead and brow bridges, relatively less prominent, lesser than what we used to find in the other apes, for example, and prominent crest on top and back of the skull. Okay, so and the skull, behind the skull, we have a crest-like feature that you normally see, a ridge-like feature that you normally see, and long, broad, flattish face, strong facial buttocks. So they're talking about bigger, okay, bigger face. So compared to them, because they are more robust, as I was telling you. Okay, so features-wise, there are slight differences in the skull. So this is what confused them, whether they're related to each other, they evolved from each other. So the phylogeny of this had become a bit of an issue. Okay. So far, what did I tell you? I'm comparing the Africanus with the Robustus. Few differences that they have between Africanus and Robustus. So this should give us a bit of idea that there was some confusion of how they are related to each other. They definitely share a lot of features, but this is more heavier version of this. So what might have happened? Did they evolve simultaneously or different? Okay, so let me introduce the concept of phylogeny here. So what is a phylogenetic tree? So I'm not sure whether you have ever heard about this term, phylogenetic tree and phylogenetics. To explain that, yeah. So phylogeny is study of evolutionary history and relationship of individuals or groups of living systems. Doesn't matter. This is for starting from bacteria to humans. This is one approach that we take to understand their relation to each other. Because in classification, what do we do? Classification based on their similarities, we put them in the same group. And if they become too different from each other, we identify different groups, different taxonomic classes for them. But here in phylogeny, we want to find the connections. Who came from what? Who evolved from what? Who is our ancestor? Are there ancestors for these species? Do we share common ancestor? So what do? They build something that looks like a tree. That is what's called phylogenetic tree. So you put trunk. Trunk is a beginning. Then what do? You actually put branches. You put branches. Okay, so like that you can place different species based on the order of evolution. Okay, as far as our understanding goes, we believe this is the order of evolution. How do you know the order of evolution? Depending on what information we have related to them, what fossil evidences we have related to them. How are their physical features? Facial features, skull, skeletal features, how are they? Okay, is there any, and also normally you probably studied in archaeology, we also date them based on the reference point. You find some of the components that belong to that area at that time. So you predict, you try to link all these things. But here in phylogeny, what do? You create a tree-like structure, positioning the various species in the order of their evolution. Such a tree is called a phylogenetic tree. And people use different methods to put it together. Okay, there are very different forms of how phylogenetic trees are made, but mostly they probably would use components of like skeletal features. Nowadays, they are going with genetic information, genome sequences. Now we are able to generate a bit better because of the DNA elements, because we learned how to read genomic sequences in the last 1.5, 2 decades. So this is adding a new touch up to the understanding of phylogenetics. Either they use mitochondrial DNA or they use Y chromosomal DNA, especially those where you probably find some more conservation in our genome sequences. Okay. So this is very important because at times they're asking us to explain about phylogenetic positioning of like Australopithecus. Is it clear? Are you able to understand what is a phylogenetic tree? Okay, few questions. What is phylogenetic tree? How is it constructed? What is the use of it? These 3 questions I want you to answer. What is a phylogenetic tree? Phylogenetic tree is creating a tree with connections of species or positioning species based on their order of evolution. Who is connected where? Who came first? Who came later? Who came from whom? So this information is usually put. How is it made? As I was telling you, this is made based on similarities, skeletal similarities, and nowadays using genomic sequences. They are positioned based on the available information, fossil information plus genomic information. Again from the fossils, but different analysis. Okay. So the simple phylogenetic tree may look like this. They have written Hominidae, Australopithecus, Homo, and Australopithecus. They have put different species of Australopithecus. They put different species of Homo, like Homo erectus, Homo sapiens. Simple classification. They're only beginning here. The phylogenetic tree may be as big as what you can think, starting from, let's say, vertebrates and non-vertebrates, mammals. So it can be as complex as possible because you try to connect to many. This is something that provides a bit of an idea of how phylogenetic tree may look like. Take the average picture from the average idea about human evolution. We probably had, if you're talking about primate evolution, probably we had a forest ape and also specifically hominid and hominin evolution. Hominid refers to the greater apes, etc. Hominin refers to more towards humans. So hominid evolution or hominin evolution, we kind of refer to here. So hominid is slightly up before stages that we take. So even how apes, gorillas. So in a way, we are seeing here hominid evolution, how hominid evolution has taken place. So we probably had a common ancestor. Maybe there was a forest ape. This was just predicted. There may be a forest ape. Okay, we probably had a common ancestor from which, let's say on one side, if you put a branch, this is a trunk. Let's say this is a trunk. You put a first branch. First branch is gorilla. First branch went on to become gorilla. So common ancestor, and then initially the early point, if the branch point is closer to the trunk, meaning it evolved first. So the first branch they put towards gorilla, and another branch went on to become chimpanzee. So meaning from the same common ancestor, there was a divergence that took place. Divergent evolution, do you remember? So from common ancestor, they get diverged into different environments. They try to survive there and accumulate changes in the process. So from forest ape, one line went to become, or one branch went to become gorilla. And within gorilla, there was maybe western gorilla, eastern gorilla, some extra additional branching, branch to another branch, split. Excuse me, had happened. Similarly with chimpanzees went down this side. It continued to become eastern chimpanzee. From this, wherever there may be different intermediates here, from which one line went to become western chimpanzee, another line went to become bonobos. Okay, but in the process, you see, this is where the complexity begins. This is where sometimes they are not sure whether humans have evolved much later or simultaneously with them, our ancestors. So according to this, so the branching happened earlier, even before chimpanzees and those were evolved. There was one line, one branch went towards the side of humans, where, of course, we went through multiple steps that we are learning in 1.6. Maybe we started with what is called Australopithecus. Some people think Homo genus had begun there already, but we can clearly see Australopithecus have more of ape features. So they're ape-like mans. Right? So here we probably have one line when to become Paranthropus. Paranthropus is a robust form that we are talking about. And sometimes it is put under Homo erectus. In the syllabus, it is put under Homo erectus. But in the literature, in multiple places, I find it along with Australopithecus. Because there is confusion. There's a bit of a confusion. What is where? Okay. So as you see here in the branch, there were so many sub branches. Australopithecus, Paranthropus, and then Homo genus had been more human-like ancestors started to appear. This is where I think habilis comes into the picture. As I was telling you, Homo habilis is not in the syllabus but was given in the exam. I feel this is a very important part where I think Homo genus had started. So it would have that they easier for us to read and learn if they had put Homo habilis in the syllabus, because it is very, very prominent, it looks like, in the connection to humans. Because before them, it was Australopithecus. Then came the Homo genus. So the contact or connecting point is Homo habilis, which I don't know why not given in the syllabus, but given in the exam. And Homo habilis, and then after Homo habilis, you notice Homo erectus. Okay, so they're becoming more closer to us. Habilis, erectus, and then it went on to become Neanderthals and Homo sapiens. So maybe there was a branch point. There may be a Neanderthal in one way, Homo sapiens another. But overall, what do you see? We all had a common ancestor. From common ancestor, it got diverged to become gorilla, got diverged to become chimpanzee. In the process, not directly from here. If bonobo had come from forest ape, no connection with chimpanzee, they will put a third branch here. but they have not put the third branch. What did they do? They put one long branch and split that into bonobo, meaning partly it went on becoming chimpanzees. Some of them got diverted and they became bonobos. And for all of them, it takes at least millions of years. So this is what a phylogenetic tree tells us. It tells us the evolutionary relationship among various either ancestral species or the living species. So it provides us the connections. What is the benefit of this? You see why we evolved to be so. You can start reasoning it. Why bonobos are different than chimpanzees? Maybe at one point of time they were similar. Some similarities you can see, some differences you can see. Where are the differences? Either in the dentition part, skull part, locomotory part. What are the differences? Same thing with humans. We are interested in this part. In 1.6, our focus is on this. Because before we have seen a bit of this in the primates, but we are now learning about this. If you understand this, first of all is more of factual data. This context is more important. Okay, so this is about briefly about the phylogenetic tree. Now let's talk about the issue with Australopithecus. What is the story about their phylogenetic position? So we talked about briefly, there were many fossils that were found, and especially they said some of them are gracile forms, some of them are robust forms. And we are also seeing that this eventually became Homo habilis. So is Homo Australopithecus connected? How do you create a phylogenetic tree for that? Okay. With respect to the Australopithecines, there seemed to be, as I was saying, a debate. So currently, there seems to be three different phylogenetic trees, each with its own cadre of properties. Meaning, different groups of people were supporting the different phylogenetic positioning related to Australopithecines. And also, some questions that kind of are not properly answered yet. How two dimorphic forms, two different forms, gracile and robust Australopithecines are to be classified phylogenetically. Do you put them together? Do you put them separate? They evolve from each other. There is no clarity on this. How these two forms that we have been studying, the gracile form and robust forms, how are they phylogenetically placed? Okay. So as such, there is no generally accepted phylogenetic tree. There is no consensus on single phylogenetic tree for human evolution. There are debates. Why is that? Couple of things. One, we only have bits of pieces of information. Fossil evidences are not complete. So we have bits of pieces of information. To complicate it further, we have many geographical locations where these fossils were unearthed. Okay, and assuming that you probably have unearthed most of the fossils in the world, making a connection becomes easy. But that's not the case. In country like India, they say that they're quite a bit of ignorant. They don't dig much. They don't actually save much, preserve much. So we might be losing a lot of valuable information in countries like this. This could be the case with many other developing countries in the world. Maybe lack of awareness, lack of funding, they may not show too much of interest on this. So fossils that are available probably comes from few specific areas. And it is not that we probably have all the collection of them with us. And whatever we have, bits and pieces, as I said, maybe part of the skull was found, maybe part of the, one particular part of the body has found. And with that information, coming to a conclusion is difficult. And more than that, how do you connect those points? How do you connect what was found? So people may come up with alternate explanations to the same thing. So there may not be consensus in what had happened in evolution. For many people, I think in human evolution, what is confusing is the several proposal branchings. Several branches may be there. Perhaps the major distinction between them is whether Homo is perceived as a late arrival or early arrival. Whether Homo already starting to evolve before or later. If so, at what point of time? Okay. So going to the specific points that you may have to write here. According to the Donald Johnson and Timothy White, East African fossils, Australopithecus afarensis, probably split into two branches. Okay. So according to them, they probably split into two branches. So Australopithecus, so these African fossils that we have seen, they may be split into two branches. And Australopithecine line represented by one Africanus robustus, Paranthropus boise. So one line went towards the Australopithecus, Africanus species, robustus species, boise species. So you basically write like this. You write Australopithecus afarensis, on top split, two splits. One went to become again three splits onto this. Africanus, robustus, boise. And then another line went to become humans, represented by Homo habilis, Homo erectus, Homo sapiens. So like that, two branches. One went on becoming Australopithecines, another one went on becoming habilis, erectus, sapiens. So this is called a two-branch theory of Australopithecine phylogeny. And the split that we're talking about between them might have happened 3 million years ago. So in the tertiary period, end of the tertiary period itself, this might have happened. And this Australopithecine line progressively became robust. So the gracile form evolved to become robust as per some of these theories. So they evolved from each other in a way. Okay. So, but of course, even in the branching, how do you write it? Where do you present what may also vary. For some, Africanus, which is a common link between Australopithecines and Homo line. For still others, these two branch represent parallel evolution, meaning both of them evolving at the same time. For some, they probably had branched out, okay, and then one after other evolved, not simultaneous evolution. For some people, they think there's also possibility that they both evolved at the same time. They don't have to wait for the other species to evolve. This is an ongoing process. As they parallelly happen, they happen as a products of one another. Like A goes to B, B goes to C, C goes to D is one method, right? Or A, B, C at the same time are possible to exist. So there is a confusion on this. Okay. And also to add further problem, the new fossils they found may not fit into their old theories. Robustus, which showed marked increase in the robustness of the body, face, teeth, etc. that we talked about, lined up to 2.3 to 1.8 million years ago. Okay, so some of the fossil evidences that are found kind of challenge their ideas on this. Okay, but this is briefly how they construct and what type of confusion they may have related to that. There is no consensus. There are different theories that are there. I briefly explained you picking up one theory, that is two-branch theory. Okay, and how Homo separated from the Africans at one point of time. That was about 1 point, so approximately in the Pliocene period of the tertiary, so Pliocene epoch of the tertiary. Okay, so this two-branch theory is widely accepted until this new skull I was telling you briefly that caused the problem. So this kind of challenges of what they thought about. So people have attempted to revise the theories. The revised theory now have a three-line evolutionary sequences, not two branch, but three branches. So one branch goes to this newly identified Boise or Paranthropus boise line. Second one goes to Homo. Third line goes to Africanus. One to Boise, second to Homo, and third to Africanus. And common ancestors to them is afarensis. Like that, this is three-branch theory it is called. So how do you place them? Where do you place them? May result in two-branch, three-branch theories. And for that, we still don't have complete information to conclude on this. So this is briefly about how Australopithecus phylogeny was created. Okay, moving on. So some idea about culture of Anthropopithecus. They are actually very, very old, right? As I was saying. So basic things, what they might have had in case if they had. Because habilis is where we talked about, or I briefly mentioned about, where the concept of tools might have started. But maybe simple tools were already there. They probably use simple tools that may have included sticks. So very much like how chimpanzees and gorillas use. Maybe they have used sticks. They have not made any specific tools, but they learned how to use sticks for certain purpose. And maybe non-durable plant materials that were found in the area that where the fossils were found indicated they might have used tools. They make connections like this. Stones, they might have thought about using stones, but there is no evidence to that. Whether they actually designed or shaped them, there is no evidence. Mostly stones tools are probably found after them, after these people. And it seems likely that they lived in small social groups containing a mixture of males and females, children and adults. By looking at how fossils were found in the given area, they probably assume that they lived together. Maybe they lived in groups. Looks like small groups. Maybe male, female, children, and some adults maybe together. And these fossils have also shown that females tend to have slightly smaller stature compared to the males. Okay? This is something that is known in addition to what we already discussed related to Australopithecus. Next, we'll move on to Homo habilis. I've been telling you already about Homo habilis, right? So Homo genera had started. I'll share this image with you. Okay. See if you are able to. So this image is what I was talking about, provides a bit of more complete picture about this process. Okay, so about 4.8 or 5 million years ago, we were talking about some of these things. I think in the syllabus we discussed only related to Australopithecus. Before that, maybe there was Ardipithecus. So Australopithecus afarensis, so Lucy we talked about, where unshaped tools might have been used. Okay, and you see in them, they even gave the number of fossils they found. 120 fossils were available, mostly in Ethiopia, Kenya, Tanzania. Okay, later, in about 2.5 million years ago, look at this, how they phylogenetically placed it. From Australopithecus came Paranthropus. Okay, from Australopithecus afarensis came Africanus. So afarensis was the ancestor from which Africanus and Paranthropus has evolved. And in this theory that they're following two branch theory. There is no third branch here going to Homo. The Homo evolved from Africanus. So like that, there are difference in opinions that people have. So Paranthropus continued to become Bozi. I was telling you, Central Africa, they found 2090. And look at them, this Bozi probably lived almost to the time of where Homo erectus has lived. So they were also living at the same time. So it's not happened. If you still find their presence in these areas, so it is an indication that they parallelly survived. And Paranthropus survived till the more modern, just before the more modern humans, almost up to 1 million years. Okay, so and look at the numbers. For how many fossils we have for many of them. For erectus, we have 150 fossils. Otherwise, heidelbergensis, we have 50. Neanderthals, we have about 500 fossils. Otherwise, some of them only have 10. Only 5 for Homo habilis here. And another group of Homo habilis, 15. So not many. And you see question marks here. What happened later? We don't know. They got extincted or someone else, some ancestors have evolved from them. We have no clues. Okay, so this provides this image I'm going to share with you. This provides an overall summary. So keep this in mind. Like look at number of fossils, specific types of fossils also sometimes mentioned like Lucia, and the number of fossils I was telling you. What else? Any specific things like older one tools. Older one tools were developed during this time. Okay, and they become more and more common in habilis. And Homo ergaster in Kenya, they had Achillean tools. Okay, and probably the migration, Eurasian migration might have happened at this time. And then in the Homo erectus time, maybe fire was invented during this time. Okay, so then more specialized tools were produced in Neanderthals time. These tools you probably study in archaeology. So this is showing the timeline that when they probably evolved. I'm going to share this. This provides you overall picture about these things, overlap, overall timeline. You see the range starting from about 1.9 million years ago to almost 0.2 million years ago, 2 lakhs years ago. This Homo erectus, Homo species erectus might have survived. Then came the other ones that we are going to discuss today. Okay, so I hope this image is useful. So what are we going to do? Quickly, we're going to talk about specific features. Now you have a picture about habilis and erectus, Neanderthals. So we are going in the order of their evolution. So Homo habilis. Why is it named Abel? Habilis in this able man. He's called handy man. He's called able man or handy man. Okay. So this is one of the most ancient representative of human genus Homo. So this is probably where Homo might have started. So this is the most ancient representative of. So these key points you have to write. The fossils were identified as separate species of Homo with proposed binomial name Homo habilis or handy man it is called, and this naming was given in 1964. And where did this habilis survive? So mostly in the sub-Saharan Africa. For each of these, write some key points, keywords. So it will become easy for you to remember the structure of information I'm providing. Handyman, he is known as in 1964 based on some fossils, they named them. And where were these fossils found? These fossils were found in sub-Saharan Africa. And at what time duration? From about 2.4 to 1.5 million years. 2.4 to 1.5 million years. So approximately between tertiary and quaternary period. And where were they found? Sub-Saharan Africa. Any known fossils? There are several known fossils. Don't have to remember all of them, as I was telling you. A brief idea. Like, of course, at this time, you notice most of the fossils being found only in Africa. Like if you see the places, Tanzania, Kenya, another in Kenya, Ethiopia, Hadar in Ethiopia, another place in Kenya, another place in Tanzania, Old White George, here. This is where several fossils were found. This is a very famous place in archaeology in Tanzania. There is also a dedicated museum for this there. So, beginning from 1960 to 2000, several such fossils related to Homo habilis were found. Okay, so some of them got names. For example, the OH7 partial skeleton of a boy they found, and a Twiggy in 1968 they found only fragmented skull. They found fragmented skulls. Once they found upper jaw, once they found skulls. Most of the times, upper jaws and skulls, partial skeleton, fragmented skulls. So this is what they had to use. Okay, so one source, I'm going to, of course, give you sources. I think IGNOU material and some selected information tables I'm going to give you on this. But Encyclopedia Britannica has information on this. And a few universities also maintain this information on their websites. Otherwise, I found Encyclopedia Britannica has a lot of written information on this chapter. But I didn't go through one particular source. I've collected information from various sources here to give you that overall picture. So like that, this is briefly about the various skulls. And you can even see what was found there. Bones, food bones, skulls. Okay, skeleton. So this is another way of showing the phylogenetic tree. So you notice here timeline. What were they showing here? The size, brain size, how brain actually increased in size. This provides you the approximate evolution. So look at this. So here on the x-axis, we are looking into cc, brain capacity, cranial capacity, 300 to 1500 cc. So look at apes like chimpanzees here. Chimpanzee is approximately 400 cc, 300 to 400 cc. Gorilla is little bigger than chimpanzees, so they probably had about 500 cc of brain. Okay. So how humans fit here? Australopithecus more or less are here. They are in the same range of chimpanzees as well as gorillas. Australopithecus. So probably from 400 to 600 cc approximately, or even went up to 700 cc. Homo habilis, brain is slightly evolved compared to them. So they may started somewhere. There are ranges to this 720, or sometimes they even say 600 cc for Homo habilis. So Homo habilis is here. There's a range to it, maybe up to 900 cc. But other evolved Homo erectus, who lived longer, as I was showing in the previous image, they probably had close to our brain capacity. 1000, 1100 cc brain capacity they had, even 1200 sometimes. And interestingly, you notice this Homo neanderthalensis had probably bigger brains and heads than us. 1500 cc, they went even up to 1500 cc. Okay, overlapping with Homo sapiens, but they came before us. So here, what are we seeing in this image? We are actually ordering, placing them in connection with the cranial capacity. So based on that also, you can clearly see these Australopithecines were more ape-like, even in the brain size. And then came habilis, then came erectus, then came Neanderthalensis, and maybe heidelbergensis, and then Homo sapiens. Okay, roughly, if you remember, writing down, because you know what subheadings to cover, writing down this information will not be too difficult.
So why is size of brain important? Like,
Yes, size of the brain important because we talked about in the factors, correct? So the complexity, brain increase in size seems to have a correlation with increase in complexity. Okay, so like cultural aspects and the intelligence aspects probably have evolved like that. So this is one factor that helps us figuring out the order of evolution. Okay, so because the factors we were talking about, more emphasis on as you started hunting, as we started, making tools. The complexity of the brain is important. Otherwise, it would have not been possible for them to inherit these ideas to the future generations. So the complexity has connection to this behavior. So the size seems to help us place them or give us clues about when did they evolve, what time did they evolve, what is a modern condition, and what about the other fossils where they can be placed. Okay. Let's briefly we'll talk about few characteristics. I've highlighted some of the characteristics here. Make a note of them. So brain case of habilis is larger than Australopithecus. We've already seen the image. The brain size is definitely larger. So ranges to 650 to 800 cc. Right? Ranges to 650 to 800 cc. Habilis, I was telling you here. So it may go from about here in the images show 700. Slight variation will be there on the prediction, but approximately 600 to 800 or 900 cc. Comparative to the Australopithecus is definitely bigger. So brain case is increased with the cranial capacity ranging from 650 to 800 or 650 to 900 or whatever you say, approximately in that range. Not more human-like, but on the way, halfway towards, approximately. Approaching to that of the erectus, Homo erectus. So what else they have seen? In Australopithecines, unlike the Australopithecines, the frontal lobes, it's part of the brain. Frontal lobes is we have forebrain, right? Within the forebrain, we have frontal lobes. These lobes mostly related to our intelligence, they say. Okay, they were well developed. So this part is already developing, and that correlates with stone tool development as well. They were developing the tools as well as brain is developing. So you can mention that to strengthen your discussion on factors. There was an overlap between the increase in complexity of the brain and size of the brain and the activities that humans were making at that time. So, tool making. Then facial features, if you see, mandibles. Mandible is a lower jaw part, the bottom part, lower jaw. They're comparatively less massive. Remember the characteristics wise, humans should have less massive jaws and chin. But Australopithecus had more like a bigger jaw like apes. So as we are moving towards humans in the form of Homo habilis here, the mandible size has decreased. So you can just put an arrow mark, down arrow mark, decrease in mandible size. Smaller teeth, decrease in teeth size. Smaller teeth, but stronger. So small teeth size decreased, but they're still stronger. Maybe they were eating nuts and other hard foods like meat. They require tools and bones, right? Okay, so they probably were started using this, but they also had stronger teeth. Maybe they were eating this nuts. So you approximately guess the diet based on dentition and what gets found there. And their hind limb morphology, their feet were becoming more like humans. So the feet were becoming more like humans. So these are some of the specific features. So we first talked about brain and cranial capacity, then we talked about facial features, hind limb morphology, and then I was also telling you that already we have seen that Homo habilis was a tool maker. And this toolkits belong to old one industry. You might have studied the different tools in those times. So old one industry tools probably were made by habilis, Homo habilis. They probably had cutting tools, scraping tools, tools to make tools. These evidences might have found where Homo habilis related fossils were found. Just write these key points. Okay, habilis was once asked in the exam. Okay, so gradual understanding about how things are changing. You already know what's supposed to change from the characteristics. But at this point, what has changed? What is the brain capacity size? How is the jaw? So what are the specific features that they could see from the fossils, available fossils? And most importantly, cultural aspect, tool making. Diet and tool making. Okay. Moving on. Yeah, so this is already talked about. So that is briefly about habilis, not in the syllabus, but as being asked in the exam once, wanted to give you a brief idea on that. Next, we'll move on to Homo erectus. So 1.6b, Homo erectus. And within Homo erectus, you see, they mentioned Paranthropus, but we already discussed about Paranthropus in the related to Australopithecus because they're better connected there. Then in Europe, they have given Homo erectus heidelbergensis, Homo erectus javanicus, Homo erectus pekinensis. So three forms of Homo erectus we have to see. Homo erectus, heidelbergensis, javanicus, pekinensis. I'll tell you what they are individually. For now, let's talk about erectus. What is Homo erectus in general? So Homo erectus refers to upright man. It refers to what? Upright man. The man who could actually stand straight. So clear indication of bipedalism. They are known as upright man. Homo erectus, erected posture or upright posture. It is referred to. Maybe in the timeline of 1.8 million years. So exactly the where we divide the quaternary period. 1.8 million years ago to 1.4 or 0.14. 0.14, not 1.8, 0.14 million years or 1,40,000 years. 1.8 to 0.14, long period. 0.1 million years to approximately 2 million years. So definitely very successful species of humans.
Quaternary is Holocene, right? So like 65 million.
Quaternary is
Holocene,
1.8, right? 1.8 million years is where Holocene is we're talking about Pleistocene and Holocene, both.
both are quaternaries.
Both are quaternary, yes. We wrote both of them together, right? So Pleistocene and Holocene started about 1.8 million years or 2 billion years. Okay, so this is where quaternary had begun. I was telling yesterday, right? We write both Pleistocene, Holocene under quaternary. Okay, so few things that you notice here related to them. Locations where the fossils were found. Homo erectus fossils were interestingly compared to the Australopithecus and Homo habilis. The fossils were found all over the world. Look at this from this image, South Africa. So other areas of Africa like Tanzania, Kenya, Ethiopia, and Spain, Georgia, China, Indonesia. They are found almost in different parts of the world. So it must hinting that how did all these people came to these areas? Just remember that point. I'll come to the discussion on this. So several key fossils, number of fossils were found related to Homo erectus because of the distribution, because of their survival for a long duration in the timeline. Okay, so what else? So best known specimen of Homo erectus is a specimen of Kenya nicknamed Turkana boy. Turkana boy is one of the fossil that is commonly referred to Homo erectus, especially what is called Homo ergaster. It is called Turkana boy, found in Kenya. So we are seeing the geographical location of them and where fossils were found. Then we'll come to the features of them. Like these places are already showing you, start the places where they were found. So Africa, Europe, China, and Indonesia. So based on this, they say that erectus was the first ancestor to make it very far from Africa. Probably this is when humans have left, or our ancestors have left Africa. And the species evolved in Africa, then expanded to Asia. This idea helps us to understand about different theories of human migration. Okay. So Turkana boy, ergaster talked about, different sites, positions I talked about. So fossils discovered at that time by Eugene Dubios in Indonesia in 1891. At that time, as I was telling you, some fossils were found in Indonesia. But although Darwin predicted that human ancestors were probably African, but as evidences were being found in Asia, people also started thinking that they have Asian origins. So the debate of whether we evolved in Africa or Asia have stemmed from presence of fossils in various places. Indonesia, they found a human-like fossil, Homo erectus fossil there. Okay, but several theories say that erectus originally migrated out during the Pleistocene glacial period in Africa, that is approximately roughly 2 million years ago, where I was telling you the quaternary beginning of the quaternary period. So Pleistocene period. So before that, where probably they had started migrating. And features wise, if you notice the features wise in them, so if you see the brain case, Brain case is low sloping. So slowly, like you see, sloping behind, not much flat, but it was receding like this. So sloping brain case can be found with pronounced brow ridges, bigger brow ridges, still more ancestral features, preliminary features. So pronounced brow ridges were there. If you see the skull, low sloping brain case, pronounced brow ridges, clearly visible, thick brow ridges, which we don't have as moderns. And the brain size has reached close to us, close to modern humans. 650 to 1250 cc, close to us, 650 to, so habilis to human, close to modern. Of course, still a bit more we require as humans because we have 1350 plus. So brain size between 650 cc to 1250 cc. So key points about skull. If you write about, let's say, about 8 to 10 points, expanding that will be easier in the exam. So size-wise, overall body size, unlike Australopithecus, Homo erectus was the size of modern humans. The overall body size also is more human-like, more modern human-like. Okay, remember I was showing you that image where size has increased, erectus from Australopithecus, so size of the humans have increased to erectus, then becoming more modern human-like. Some human species has bigger bodies than us, but otherwise overall body size is becoming modern. But built a little differently around the shoulders. They say shoulder seems like skeletal system or skeletal observations have showed a different way of positioning of shoulder. They called weird forward facing of shoulder joint. They have seen some abnormality or some peculiar feature in the shoulder positioning, shoulder girdle. The shoulder girdle are shown. Okay, so this seems to be a bit abnormally placed. So few specific differences they found here. Otherwise, it's more modern human. And if you see modern legs were actually angles and hips were more modern human-like, supporting the complete bipedalism. Modern legs and hips. So changes were visible from the fossils related to the legs and hips. Modern legs and hips, size-wise close to modern humans. Brain size is becoming relative to us, closer to us. Fairly modern appearance. The height seems to be 1.79 meters, relatively tall, about 1.79 meters. Okay, and they probably were living in hunter and gatherer communities. Hunter and gatherer communities. Okay, slowly the culture is evolving, the diet style is changing, and of course they were making tools. Habilis already started making tools, but more advanced tools. So older one style tools were chipped from one side, and Achillean style tools chipped on both sides. So those type of tools were found in their time. Habilis, we already talked about older one style tools. Then probably went on kind of modifying the tools, changing the tools as well. So further developments in tool making have happened in erectus time. Okay. So this is what I was telling you. Our ancestors were making tools before Homo erectus evolved, but this Homo erectus made more complicated tools than earlier humans. Okay, this is a brief idea about erectus. Now I'll talk to you specifically those that are given in the syllabus. But now you should get a brief idea about how different is erectus. They're becoming more modern. Some facial features are still primitive, like brow ridges. Brain size, and cranial capacity as coming to closer to us. And they're found in various locations in the world. So these are the key points related to erectus. Along with that, I also talked about more modern tools that are made. Okay, so majority of these things we talked about. So probably because of making tools, the technology need to be further carried on to the future generations. They learned and passed down adaptations of culture for survival to the others. And also key point here, they probably also found to control the fire. Erectus time is where probably they found. So hunter and gatherers we talked about, more modernized tools that we see are more sophisticated tools, if not modernized tools. Okay, and they are learning to pass on the information. Excuse me. So now let's see the specifics of this specific categories given. So one is Homo heidelbergensis. The first one in Europe, Homo erectus in Europe. So we're going to learn about them in three different areas: Europe, China, and Indonesia. So heidelbergensis, I'm sure you probably have heard about the place called Heidelberg in Germany. Okay, this is where the fossils were found. That is why they got the name heidelbergensis. It was named for a jaw of the species discovered near the town called Meyer in southeast of Heidelberg in Germany. University of Heidelberg, you might have heard about. One of the Max Planck Institute is there in Heidelberg. Okay, so in 1907, beginning of the 20th century, they found jaw of Homo erectus, and this is called Homo heidelbergensis. So based on the place they named it. Okay, and this Homo heidelbergensis is of course erectus, but looks like even compared to the average erectus person or individual, they had a bit more modern human traits as well. That is why you see here, heidelbergensis has some correlation with erectus, some archaic humans, and also some modern humans. So maybe they were connected to the modern humans more closely than erectus.
This
So
is
once they identify, yes, sorry.
this is a separate species, right? Like you're saying it's part of.
No. This is connected to erectus. So this is all comes under erectus, but found in different regions. Okay, but variations may be there. Homo erectus variation may be there. They may sometimes refer to them as a different species, but they're connected. They belong to the Homo erectus category, but slight variant. Maybe they went to a different geographical area, evolved differently. So some specific differences you may find. So that is why they probably have given a different species name, heidelbergensis, but it correlates with the erectus. So they all come under the erectus, and if you even see the syllabus, they put together under Homo erectus, but in different locations. But those are related to heidelbergensis can be found in different regions again. So they found in multiple regions in Africa also they found. Okay, in Israel they found. They started now comparing the features to them. Homo heidelbergensis like features. Where are these fossils found which are similar? Again, they found in several regions in Europe, several regions in China, like that they were found. And look at the cranial capacity as well. Some of them, these are all predictions. So sometimes you see 1450, 1400, slightly more modern brain size it looks like, definitely. Okay. So characteristics. What are the specific characteristics of heidelbergensis? So heidelbergensis overall structure of the body seems to be compact. The overall size of the body seems to be compact. We kind of already learned about it. Compact bodies are mostly found in the colder climates. So maybe the compact version of this because of the environmental effect. So compact bodies, maybe because they're connected to cold climates. Next, the size. Average size of male seems to be 5 feet 9 inches. So comparable to the modern humans, 5 feet 9 inches, 175 centimeters. Right? So males were 5 to 9 and females averaged about 5 feet 2 inches. So 175 centimeters versus 157 centimeters. So Homo erectus came at least 3-4 times in the exam. So very important in the aspect of exam. They're talking about various characteristics, features. Sometimes they asked Asian Homo erectus. Salient characteristics, geographical distribution of Homo erectus came once in 2015. So their features, geographical distribution are short note and related to cultural aspects, stone tool making, diet. So those aspects also we have to write. Okay, either generally asking or they're asking specifically about Asian version of erectus like that. Okay, so weight was also males were about 62 kgs on average, females were about 51 kgs. So enough sexual dimorphism in size, body size can be seen here. Height is different and weight is also approximately different on average. So meaning their overall is comparable, maybe slightly smaller than the modern humans today, or comparable to the modern humans. So they say that this is the overall body size. Brain size also they say only 10% smaller than today's people. The brains were slightly smaller, about 10% small. So meaning if we consider ourselves about 1350 or 1400, 150 cc less. So about they're talking about 1200, 1250 cc on average. So 10% smaller brains than modern humans. They still had large brow ridges. Brow ridges were still prominent. As I was showing you erectus image before. Larger brow ridges. And foreheads were low placed foreheads. They're becoming flatter, basically. Okay. So also some brain cases, there were some peculiar differences that you can find compared to the actual erectus and heidelbergensis. So more elongated brain case. So brain case were more stretched. So definitely more erectus-like head shape, they say. So compact bodies, average size more closer to modern humans, 10% smaller brains, bigger brow ridges. Okay, features overlapping with erectus. So approximately this is how it was looking like. The reconstruction of the image looks like this. Large thick brow ridges, short sloping forehead above the eye sockets, slightly smaller jaws. So jaw size was slowly decreasing and very strong jaw. slightly smaller jaws. As we talked about short males and females, slightly short. Lower legs were long, leg bones were thick and strongly built. So the leg bones, shin bones, leg bones seems to be very, very strong. So maybe an indication that they were hunting, strong physical activity. Strong legs can predict it from the bone density. Okay. So these are the features of heidelbergensis. So if you write down about 6-7 points like this for features. Next we'll move on to the Pekinensis. Homo erectus pekinensis. Homo erectus pekinensis, also called as Peking man. Peking man. So Asia, basically found in erectus version in Asia, or Asian version of erectus. It refers to as a collection of 6 complete or nearly complete skulls and many fragments of other parts found in the caves and quarry outside Peking. So Peking is a place in Beijing. Peking is a place in China, Beijing, where in the caves there they found many almost complete skulls. So majority of the parts related to the skulls were found, and other parts of the body. So several fossil evidences were obtained in Peking region. That is why it's called Peking man. So several skulls and other parts of the body were found in the caves of Peking. This happened in 1923 to 1927. 1923 to 1927. Okay, they have done excavations at another place. This is commonly seen in the fossil studies. Is Zaukodian, Zaukodian, or however you say it, Zaukodian, near Beijing. So, if you see the characteristics, this Peking man is hominid, like Homo erectus. So, hominid, Homo erectus. It is classified to be Homo erectus, but Asian version of Homo erectus. So, Java man that we are going to talk next, and they both are connected to erectus like that. And the bones wise, if you see, this is the largest collection of hominid bones ever found at one site. The single site in China is probably what the largest collection they could ever get. So good amount of information on them. And timing wise, if you see how old are these fossils, the timing wise, initially they thought they probably are anywhere between 0.2 or 0.3 to 0.2 million years old. 0.3 to 0.0 million years old. So 300,000, 3 lakhs to 2 lakhs. Lakh years old. But this I think redating has happened on this, more modernization in the techniques, advancement in the techniques is happening. So this seems to be older than that. This seems to be not 0.2 to 0.3, maybe 0.4 to 0.6. As old as 4 lakhs to 6,70,000 years old. Okay, so anywhere between 0.2 to 0.6 as we are seeing, that old they are. So interestingly, what happened, I was telling you, when they started finding these type of fossils, idea about where humans have evolved may be questioned. Like for example, Franz Weidenreich. So in between about 1900s, mid 1900s, he considered Peking man as a human ancestor and specifically ancestor of Chinese people. They thought Chinese people probably have evolved from Homo erectus pekinensis or Peking man. So they thought Chinese were the descendants of this Peking man. Okay, but Chinese writings on human evolution found in 1950s could not establish this evidence. So there was no clear evidence that Peking man indeed their ancestral man. So it is unclear whether Peking Chinese have evolved from Peking man or not, because there were no evidences that could be found in writing, in records. So some people, because of that thought, maybe he's not an ancestor of China or Chinese people. The Peking man may be more resembled to the modern Europeans. So maybe he migrated to Europe and gave rise to the Europeans that we see. But there is no clear conclusion on this. Is he an ancestor of Chinese people or ancestor of European? Not clear. So some of the, you can write this for the cultural aspects. Some interesting things have been shown because they found so many skulls there. So they found a group of burned animal bones found in the same caves that where they found this Peking man. So this is maybe evidence of fire used by an ancestor of modern man. So animal bones were found there. So maybe fire had been used. So invention of fire you can mention there. And correlation here is they found many burnt bones, animal bones there. So they're not normally died. So they're burnt. You can see the effect of burning process on it. So burnt bones were found along with the Peking man bones. So maybe we were using fire for cooking. This is one interesting factor. Second fact is ritual cannibalism. There are evidences of cannibalism, evidences of eating humans. The ritual of eating cannibalism, probably or eating humans, was found during the Peking man time. How do they know whether they practiced the cannibalism? By looking at the skulls. Because skulls, there was a peculiar way of breaking the skull. The skulls had been smashed at the base. They smashed at the base, and they probably were eating the head, eating the brain part like that. We kind of discussed some of the practices in some areas where Kuru disease was common, prion disease was common. So like that Peking man time also, there seem to be some clues about practicing cannibalism, possibly by other Peking men to gain access to the brains. So which is a practice that is normally seen in cannibalism process. So like that, what fire incidents or invention of fire, cannibalism can be seen. So hunter and gatherers, tool making, and cooking meat with fire, cannibalism. So these are some factors that you can expand on for cultural aspects. Okay, so this is about the Peking man, Homo erectus pekinensis. Now we'll move on to the next one. So Asia we have two. One is pekinensis, another one is javanicus. We'll go to the Indonesian version of this. Okay, so I think we kind of already talked about them. So Java man, Homo erectus Java man. He's also from Asia. Java man was discovered by Eugene Dubios, who is a military doctor, Dutch military doctor, in 1891 on the river, Solo River, near Java, Indonesian island. So where were this evidence is found? In Indonesian island on the banks of Solo River in 1891. In 1891. So they thought that initially they named him Pithecanthropus erectus, so more ape-like. Okay, they were definitely seeing more ape-like features, so they classified them as Pithecanthropus erectus, or upright ape man they called. So because still looking more like ape, of course with a lot of modern features, but still ape features could be found or visible. But later they renamed it to Homo erectus. Initially, it was named as Pithecanthropus erectus, or upright ape man, was later renamed to erectus, Homo erectus. Okay, so later they also found several evidences like that, many fossils like that, like in Sangirian village in Solo River on the same branch, they found, or they also found what is called Mozocerto child. The skull of the child they found in East Java, place called Mozokerto. That is it's called Mozokerto child. Okay, so several other fossil evidences were also found in that region. You can cite one name like this, Eugene Dubios is enough, but it will be difficult to remember many other names. And some fossils, Peking man fossil, Mozokerto child, if you can mention one or two. Depending on if you're talking about Asian, talk about two, both Java man as well as Peking man. Okay. The Mozokerto child, so initially thought 1 million year old, but later the skull was found to be 1.8 million years old. 1 point. So erectus, we were talking about that, came in that era. So 1.8 million years old. So Homo erectus lived much longer than thought, and Homo erectus and Homo sapiens existed at the same time in Java. So maybe, remember in the image I was showing you this. If you see this image where Homo erectus survived, okay, from 1.8 million years to approximately 0.2, maybe at that around the same time point, maybe Homo sapiens were also living. Parallelly, maybe both were living. Two different species of Homo were living, maybe. Okay, so there are ideas, but there's some overlap. You notice a bit of overlap that you see between this end of this and the tip of this. Maybe there was time where both modern humans and erectus might have lived together, but unclear because a very small overlap seems to be there. So Java man compared to the Peking man is an older version. So Java man probably were living even before Peking man in China. Okay, so maybe bit more primitive, compared to the Peking man in time wise. So what are the characteristics of Java man? This is how the artistic reconstruction of Java man, how he looked like. We briefly talked about reconstruction process, right? I also posted you some material, brief reading on reconstruction process, how they actually reconstruct the facial features. There are many spots they identify and they try to kind of design and show how the facial features are. Like that, this is a reconstructed version. So cranial capacity is about 900 cc. 900 cc, smaller than of the other specimens of erectus. So slightly smaller version of, because we said it goes up to 1200 cc approximately, right? So slightly less cranial capacity has seen with Java man, maybe a bit more primitive in that sense. So skull flat in profile with little forehead. So smaller forehead, but overall skull is flat. So more flatter skull. With sagittal crest. I was telling you yesterday's class, sagittal crest. Okay, you see the bridge like this, indicating that there was strong jaw muscles. It probably had strong muscles attached to them. So basically erectus features right here. So sagittal crest, prominent sagittal crest. Okay. Heavy brow ridges. We already talked about in erectus. And no massive jaw. So chin is still not clearly visible. You're becoming better in the face, but you look at the moral face size, it may look like the ape-like face. So chin is tall, chin is still not so visible or prominent, but getting there. Slowly we are showing that indication that the chin will show up eventually. Otherwise, they still have big jaw, massive jaws can be seen with no chin. So still not completely modern human, but many modern human-like features, especially the brain size. Facial features are still in between, kind of. Teeth also more or less human-like, but they find that overlapping of canines that we have seen, diastema and overlapping of canines seems like teeth have that overlap, like what we have seen with apes. Okay. So this is about facial features, and bones we are already talking about. They have strong bones. So erectus have strong bones, right? So that we already showed you in the image before. So thigh bones show that Java man walked fully erect and like modern man. The strong bones were indicating a couple of things. One, as I was telling you, they were having full control on the walking. And second, maybe the strong bones indicate the activities like hunting. And average height, we kind of talked about 5 feet 18 inches already. About 5'8", 5'9", we talked about average height, 170, 175 centimeters approximately. Okay, right. So that is about the Homo erectus. We talked about Homo erectus in general, and then we discussed about Pekinensis. We discussed about Java man. Okay, so that's 1.6b Homo erectus. We'll now move on to Neanderthals, 1.6c Neanderthal. So as you see, it's a matter of factual data and how do you connect to it, right? I hope you are getting the picture about how things are changed. So Neanderthal man. In Neanderthal man, we have two that we have to learn here. One is called classical type. Classical type is refers to as La Chapelle aux Saints. It's known as La Chapelle aux Saints or classical type of Neanderthal man. And second one we have to learn is Mount Carmel, which is progressive type. Okay, write down the key information related to that. So the first nearly complete skeleton of this Neanderthal was found in France. The place is La Chapelle aux Saints. That is why they named as La Chapelle aux Saints. So this was found in 1908. Where was it found? In a place in France. The place is called La Chapelle aux Saints. And who found it? Amadi and Jean Biasoni. Amadi and Jean Biasoni and Bardin. These are the people who discovered it. Amadi, Biasoni, and Bardin. And the dating of this has indicated it is maybe 60,000 years old. So they're becoming more modern. As we see it, getting closer to us. 60,000 years old. And the geological age is upper Pleistocene age. Upper Pleistocene. So Quaternary period, Pleistocene age, before Holocene. Okay, so look at the features of them. Look at the features. If you look into the bone skull system, low receding forehead. Okay, receding forehead. Still not flat. You see this angle here? Receding forehead. And mid face is still protruding mid face. And brow ridges can be clearly seen, heavy brow ridges. So still very much like what we have seen with the Homo erectus. Lot of features are similar. Forehead is still receding, not flat, protruding overall mid face, heavy brow ridges. These are the key features they say of Neanderthals. And the cranial capacity may went up to 1600 cc. This could be an artifact of looking, or they may have an overall bigger body size with slightly bigger brain. Okay, even bigger than modern humans, looks like. Cranial capacity is about 1600 cc. Okay, and I was always telling you, the face is bit projected. Face is long and projected. Forehead, as already told you. And the lower jaw seems to be strong. They also have stronger lower jaws, but not as massive as heidelbergensis. Heidelbergensis seems to have, when you compare the jaw portions of the heidelbergensis of erectus and this, they have less stronger, less massive jaws. And they may started showing rudimentary chin. Basic chin probably was showing up. as we talked about already in the erectus. Okay, so these are some of the facial features, the skull-related features of La Chapelle-Aux. Okay, can we move on? Have you written those points? If you see the dentition part, so still some primitive features can be seen in them, but more human-like. Already we have seen that with erectus, right? More human-like. Few things like diastema, overlapping canines. So we don't have specific details on them, but dentition has some primitive features still. Overall looking human-like, but some primitive features. This is also like erectus. Okay, so short and strong and stout bones of the skeleton. So meaning they have very strong bones. So they probably have a very good muscular development. Again, talks about activities at that time. So they have strong bones and a good indication of good muscular development or powerful muscles. Their vertebral column, okay, seems to be short and stout. Sometimes it may happen because of the specific fossils they found. So sometimes getting an average picture is difficult. So vertebral column is short and stout. The ribs are strong ribs, maybe large thorax that they have. Again, physical activity of inhalation, adaptations we talked about, right? So ribs are strong, indicating large thorax. So dentition, like more primitive, somewhat primitive features, mixed features of modern humans and primitive, you can say. Short and strong bones, powerful muscles, short and stout vertebral column, strong ribs or large ribs. Okay, and there was little bit of an artifact also was noted in the literature. So they found knee joints, okay, little bit of bent. So knees were little bit of bent. So they thought the way they were walking was different, but indeed it looks like what they were looking at is an old man's fossil. So that may show a little bit of wear and tear in the knee joints, right? Maybe a different angle in the knee joints, because when they have joint pains, the way they walk change, which influences the skeletal structure. So this may be an artifact that they thought they were walking with bent legs, but that may not be the case. Maybe they were looking at the old man's father, as interpreted by other scholars. And interestingly, they have seen that the greater toe was separated from the other digits. Greater toe was separated from the other digits. Why was it? No idea. But remember, I think Down syndrome is one area that where we see the toe actually separated greatly from the other. There's more separation between the 4 digits, and the toe can be seen in Down syndrome people. We don't know whether disease condition or for some reason they had this toe that separated. There's no idea, but this can be seen in La Chapelle. Okay, so these are some of the specific features that we are learning here with respect to the classical type. We learned about the classical type. Next, we learn about the progressive type, the next version of the Neanderthal man. So 2 types that we have, you can mention in the, if question comes, talk about both of them, either compare them or briefly cite few features of each of them. Classical type and progressive type. Progressive type is called Mount Carmel. This Mount Carmel were found in 2 adjoining caves in Palestine, in Israel. In 1930s, they found the skeletons in 2 neighbor caves in Palestine, Israel. Okay, and these were mostly one skeleton of an adult female. One of them, skeleton of adult female, a mandible and various bones and teeth. Skeleton of adult female, a mandible part, okay, and some bones and teeth. Similar, at the same time, they also found fragmented remainings of 10 individuals beside many isolated fragments. So maybe 10 people and their mixed bones were found. So like that, it makes it very difficult to join together. But as I was telling you, they can slowly classify them into age, gender, as we studied in forensic anthropology, to identify who does it belong to. But it makes it complicated for them because 10 individuals' bones were mixed there in one place. And an adult female mandible plus bones and teeth. And the age of them seems to be dated back to 1,20,000 to 80,000 years. 1,20,000 to 80. Okay, so look at the characteristics. Based on the skulls, that they found out that tall, massive heads. They have tall, massive heads. Tall, massive heads. Okay, and they have seen this bun-like region. Occiput, it is called, slightly projecting occiput. So there's a back side of the skull. Okay, slight projection can be seen here in the occiput. But overall, the head size is medium. It's not too big, not too small, medium. Okay, medium head and moderately sized face. They're trying to correlate with the other existing evidences for fossils. So head size was not big. Okay. And there was no canine fossa. Canine fossa is this spaces that we have in the bone region. Like in the face, if you see between the bones, you may have a slight, specific region. I'll show you that. This image here. So this portion is called canine fossa. This gap is not there. This gap is not seen. Either you see from the skull or this skull here. Number 6, if you see, this portion is called canine fossa. Okay, this part. So basically, it's like a ditch or a gap space is not there in them. There was no canine fossa. The chin was almost well developed. And what you notice, start seeing it, you start noticing the well-developed chin. So what are we learning? Like modern humans, the canine fossa is not there, but chin is developing. You can see the chin here. Progression from the previous category as we see it. Okay. Okay. Moving forward. So you kind of see this modern human versus this Neanderthals. This bun-shaped back part I was just showing you, bigger forehead, brow ridges. So modern humans don't have those brow ridges. Still sloping forehead. Okay, chin. Kind of you start seeing the chin, but of course not as good as what we see in modern humans. So these are some direct comparisons. Some museums you normally find these comparisons. This image comes from a museum where they compare how our ancestral humans different from us. In this image, you can clearly see how flat our heads usually, and you see kind of an extension on that backside of the skull. And there's definitely more massive. Maybe that is why they have bigger brain cases. bigger size of the cranium. Okay, just to provide you a picture about the idea about this. Okay, I think we already talked about this. Next, we'll move on to Rhodesian man. 1.6D, we just have to learn about Rhodesian man. So who is Rhodesian man? What are the key features of Rhodesian man? Let's have a look at it. And how is it connected to the previous ones? So in 1921, Mr. Twigler unearthed some human remains in a place called Rhodesia in South Africa. So Rhodesia, again named after the place. This is in South Africa. Rhodesia is a place in South Africa. They found remains of a human skull. This is called Cabway skulls. Cabway skulls found in Rhodesia in South Africa. So timing of this, aging of this is not exactly known. Approximately, they say late Pliocene phase. Doubtful. So how is this connected? We studied Neanderthals. So this is maybe African version of Neanderthals. This may be an African variety of Neanderthals. So Neanderthals were probably also lived in Africa, but slight variations. So this can be Rhodesian man can be considered as African variety of Neanderthals. Okay, and because of this variation, it was not clear whether it belongs to Neanderthal category or Homo erectus category. Some people want to call them Neanderthaloids, while others want to call them Homo erectus. So whether it belongs to erectus or Neanderthals was confusing. So found in a different location in the world, in South Africa, maybe Neanderthal, or some people thought maybe Homo erectus. So there was confusion in terms of because of overlap of characteristics. But majorly, Rhodesian man looked more like a Neanderthal man. But several features are like Neanderthals. So it may be appropriate to say that he is a Neanderthal, but African variety of the Neanderthal. Okay. So these are the key points you have to write here. How is he connected? Who is he connected to? Confusion between Homo erectus and Neanderthals. Okay. So look at the characteristics of them. Look at the characteristics of them. So they seem to have a long and narrow skull. So remember dolichocephalic, we talked about a dolichocranial. So long head type. Skull, long skull, narrow skull. So little bit of thin and long. With a cranial capacity anywhere like modern human style, 1280 to 1400 cc. So cranial capacity is estimated to be more modern human like 1280 to 1400 cc approximately. 1280 to 1400 cc. But interestingly smaller in height, only 4.3 feet. So some of these I think happens in absence of enough clues. 4.3 feet approximately. So still they have bigger orbital ridges. Those ridges are still big. So prominent supraorbital ridges or brow ridges. Simply say brow ridges, bigger, prominent brow ridges, or can be still seen as the case with the Neanderthals. Receding forehead. So these are all the characteristics we already learned, right? Bigger brow ridges. Brain size is more modern human-like, bigger brow ridges. Okay, receding forehead. And no canine fossa, as we already learned in the progressive Neanderthals. So no canine fossa. and big maxillary bones. Maxillary bone is this bone, upper jaw. Big maxillary bone. Upper jaw is big, very large, not big, and flat. Big and flat. These are all, I think, mostly derivations. Like they say face gives muzzle-like appearance, like folded-like appearance. I think these are all depends on how they model it. So, but it's kind of an indication. Nasal aperture that we talked about, nasal aperture. So this angle seems to have a big angle, a large angle for that part. Bigger eyes, orbits. So sockets where eyes are put, they seems to be a bit high and a greater size. So some difference in the skull can be seen, more modern human-like features, some primitive features, like maxillary bone lacking canine fossa, and the orbit size, and supraorbital ridges are brow ridges. This is this bridge, and this is nasal aperture, the angle that basically we have here. Okay, we already showed this to you. Canine fossa we discussed about. So this is briefly about the Rhodesian man. Who is Rhodesian man? Where was it found? What are the features of Rhodesian man? Next, we move on to the last part. So this is 1.6e, Homo sapiens. Now we are coming to Homo sapiens part. And for Homo sapiens, Cro-Magnon, Grimaldi, Chancelade. We have three such examples that we have to learn here. You already figured out the terms, features are known. Just a matter of showing you what factual data we have available for this. Okay, so Cro-Magnon man. So he's dated, the time range is upper Paleolithic period, approximately 40,000 to 10,000 years ago. So Cro-Magnon man found in Europe. You clearly see the appearance like more modern human-like appearance. So these are our ancestors, Homo ancestors, and Homo sapiens. Found in Europe, and the period was between 40,000 to 10,000 years. So upper Paleolithic period. So it's a place in Europe. So in 1868, they found a shallow cave at Cro-Magnon near a town called Les Isis de Taillac. So this is part of France, southwestern France. So in Europe, within Europe, in France, a cave at Cro-Magnon place was found. And not only this, they found many ancient human skeletons in this region, in this cave. And these were unearthed by Edward Lartet. So found in France in Europe. Location is Cro-Magnon, upper Paleolithic period, 40,000 to 10,000 years ago. And this is how the reconstruction appeared like. Definitely you see more modern features. Okay. So these are identical to modern humans. They have a lot of features like us. So identical to modern humans because we are getting close to Homo sapiens. Okay. So we're talking about those that fit into our sapiens category. Almost identical to modern humans, and they're quite muscular. Well-developed muscles, quite muscular. And height is also similar, 5 feet 7 inches tall. 5 feet 7 inches tall, and long and low skull. Skulls were also kind of long, okay, positioned low, and with wide faces. As you see here, the face seems to be wide faces. Sharp forehead. That is also an important sign, right? Look at sharp forehead means flat forehead, not receding forehead, but sharp forehead. Square shaped eyes. Eye sockets were square shaped, their orbits were square shaped. So you are seeing the facial features here, more or less flat. So no receding forehead, but sharp forehead, square shaped orbits or eye sockets. Brow ridges were very slight. They were not totally modern, but slight. Slight brow ridges were there, but definitely looking more modern like. And chin could be seen. First, humans to have a prominent chin. In the previous case, we talked about chin was forming, is visible. But a prominent chin can be seen here. A clear chin. Jaw size, lower jaw size has decreased, and chin can be visible. And brain capacity is high, 1600 cc. As I said, this is approximate prediction. So either they had a better size of the brain, we don't know, but brain size is more modern like. Definitely 1300 plus, so 1600 cc. Somewhat larger than the average modern humans. And there is also clearly culture being established. People were wearing jewelry, such as necklaces, bracelets. They could be found on their skeletal systems. So they were started showing the art, some amount of the art and culture. So jewelry, necklaces were worn by them. Okay. And they also had a lot of cultural factors. They made their stable homes out of leftover tusks and large animal bones. They were using animal bones and tusks to create homes, to have some protection. And definitely they were already learned how to use the fire. Trapping animals. Fire was used to trap animals because mostly animals were attracted towards the heat, so they could capture them. So they were becoming definitely intelligent. Also used for protection against the wild animals. They were using fire to protect themselves from the wild animals. And clearly burial art was seen. They prepared their dead with beautiful flowers, seashells, and art. So the burial art could be seen by this time. They also had ceremonies for boys going into manhood and after good hunting. So there were also indications of celebrations that happened, mostly connected to the boyhood or manhood and then hunting. But language might have not developed by that time. They did not have wide variety of language. So instead, they probably had made some simple sounds like clicking sounds with their throats. So no written language yet, no written language, and no proper language signs. But maybe a preliminary version of communication might have happened, like clicking sounds. Okay, so there are definitely some differences, but many scholars didn't think that they could put it separate from the modern humans. They said this is more or less like a modern type of human. So many scientists believe that. So this is they call automatically modern human, they say, or early modern human, they say, related to this. So you can call this Cro-Magnon as early modern human, early version of modern humans. Okay. So this is how it looked like. So do you see the difference now from the old ones? So this left one is the Pithecanthropus erectus or Java man. So Java man looked like this. Homo neanderthalensis looked like this. Modern human looked like this. Can you make out the differences in their skull, in the face there? Bit of ape-like features comparatively, still bigger lower jaw, bigger brow ridges, to a more modern-like man. So clear differences can be seen here. If you keep seeing this, you should be able to differentiate enough what skull are we looking at. Okay, lot of prognathism, receding faces here, more flatter faces here, more longer noses here, bigger jaws, lower jaw, no chin. Do you notice that? Are you able to understand this part? Okay. So let's move on. I think it's getting late already. Stop me wherever I'm unclear to you, okay? So we've just wind up the last two parts, so a couple of minutes. So Grimaldi man. Next we're going to talk about Grimaldi man. So Cro-Magnon, European version that we talked about. Now we talk about Grimaldi. So Grimaldi was also found in Europe, but in Italy, not in France, but in Italy in 1901. Upper Paleolithic era comes from. So two human skeletons were found in Italy. Two human skeletons found in Italy refer to Grimaldi man. And they dated back to about 26,000 to 22,000 years. 26 to 20,000 years. So this is also before Holocene era, Holocene epoch, 12 plus 2C. But upper Paleolithic. So culture had started, so they divide them separately. Now you might have studied this in archaeology. So 26,000 to 22,000 years ago. So they can also called as European early modern humans, just like the how we said the previous one, Cro-Magnon, so Grimaldi, both can be considered as early modern humans. So unlike the Neanderthals, the Grimaldi skeleton seems to be slender. They were not as robust as the skeletons of the Neanderthals. If you see the features of them, they are slender compared to Neanderthals. They had slender or more linear skeletons compared to the Neanderthals. Okay, and gracile. So even more so than Cro-Magnon. So even compared to the Cro-Magnon, they seem to be a bit linear and smaller. So more linear, smaller compared to the Cro-Magnon. Cro-Magnon were about 170 centimeters tall, and males, big males, were only about 190 centimeters tall. But these two skeletons they found in Italy, maximum they were 160 centimeters tall. So they were definitely smaller than Cro-Magnon, smaller than Cro-Magnons. Okay, so smaller bodies, and these two skulls showed tall brain cases. Brain cases were tall, lengthier, unlike the long, low skulls found in Neanderthals. Neanderthals were extended, long skulls. They're tall brain cases. So this dimension is bigger. So slight variation within the skull. Okay, and to a lesser extent in Cro-Magnons. So the two skulls were tall, unlike the Neanderthals who had long, low skulls, and to a lesser extent to the Cro-Magnons. So definitely there's slight variation in the modern humans living in those different geographical areas. Plus, the faces had wide nasal openings. So the space between the openings seems to be a bit wide nasal openings, and lack the rectangular orbit and broad complexions. Compared to the Cro-Magnon that we talked about, they don't have this rectangular type of orbits, eye orbits or eye sockets, and broad complexion. So some features like Cro-Magnon features, some different features like wide nasal openings, lack the rectangular orbit and broad complexion. Okay, which are the Cro-Magnon-like features. Taller, definitely. Sorry, shorter, not taller, smaller, tall brain cases, and some features like Cro-Magnons. Okay. But they had some amount of prognathism attached to it. So was it type of a negroid type? No, no idea. But a bit of prognathism can be seen in their face. Okay, and the nasal bone had a nasal bridge, a high nasal bridge. This is a nasal bridge, so high nasal bridge, slightly upward placed nasal bridges. So similar to the Cro-Magnons and modern Europeans. Okay, so definitely more like those that lived in Europe, not in the tropical areas. So may not be a negroid version is a good explanation to that. And the cranial capacity was also quite large for their size. Relative to the body size, their brain seems to have been bigger. Maybe some amount of readjustment or remodification might have happened to the brain. As you see, the size of the brain increased and slightly decreased. It looks like, at least from the estimations. So brain size correlates strongly with the total muscle mass in humans, indicating that the two skeletal systems would have been well muscled in life. So indicated they probably had good amount of muscles rather than having the slender build usually seen in tropical people. So temperatures wise, so they're smaller but well built in terms of muscles. So unlike the people living in the tropical areas who tend to be much smaller and thin.
Sir,
So these are some features that they found related to the Grimaldi man. Grimaldi man. So these are features that we talked about. Some comparison with the timing that we have talked about. They are from Italy, and we discussed that they had some features like Cro-Magnon, some features like height was small, but not many fossils. So it is difficult to actually come to a bigger conclusion and getting an average picture. Okay.
sir.
Yes.
Sir, so both of these are classification of Homo sapiens,
Yes.
uh, but
Very
this is
modern.
based on geography. So I don't understand like what is the basis of this classification, like the differences or the location, because they have been named as per geography. Right now, also you can classify European man, Indian man, or something like that. But sir, what is the basis of this classification?
So what is the basis of classifying them into? So one thing is we are seeing the very modern human-like features. The timeline seems to be closer to us. Feature seems to be closer to us. But we cannot call them a complete modern human, but early modern human they call. But the thing is, all this is based on what evidences are found. So they named them based on the locations and positions that where these were actually found. So they were kind of early features of us, are very connected to us, but with little bit of primitive features left out in them. So today, when we say European man and those mans, we are talking about living ones, and we're talking about the extincted ones. So before us, these species might have present, existed. We probably were immediate descendants of them. That could be a possibility. So we are just talking about what evidences that we have for those that are extincted. We're not talking about current modern humans. These are all our species like us, which existed at one point of time, but they're not Homo sapiens sapiens. So they got extincted. And we only have few evidences related to them. Okay, which led to a couple of differences, classifications.
So is there this assumption that that there was no movement or mobility from place to place also?
Less mobility, less transport system, less connectivity, less awareness about people were living around us somewhere else. So that could be the cause. That could be what probably have led to less intermixing here. But there are different theories that intermixing might have happened. There were maybe intermixing happened between Neanderthals and erectus. So there was some debate like that going on, but we have no clue on. So it is unclear because they were living simultaneously. That is clear. The last one is Chancelade. Chancelade man. So these were found again in the France, place called Chancelade, a rock shelter in Chancelade in southwestern France. So they were discovered in 1888, end of 19th century. The fossil remains of humans discovered in Chancelade, place in southwestern France, so again in Europe. And this was mostly studied by French anatomist Jean-Léo Testet. Jean-Léo Testet. Okay. And he found out that it looks more like an Eskimo. It's like an Eskimo type. So stout, short body types looks like. So Eskimo type, and he called it Chancelade race. Let's call it a Chancelade race. Eskimo type body built he has seen. So according to him, he thought it's an Eskimo type. And this was based on this skeleton that they found, which is about 17,000 years old. 17,000 years old. 17,000 years old. So initially thought to be Eskimo type, but later paleoanthropologists agreed that this Chancelade is nothing but Cro-Magnon. Chancelade later classified to be Cro-Magnon type. So European, found in France, similar location, right? So some features were of course like Eskimo type, but later they decided to call it a Cro-Magnon. And they could clearly see that the body skeleton was actually curled, meaning they buried it. So in forensics anthropology we talked about, right? Depending on the timing, bone still retains the flexibility. So they probably buried it immediately after the death, below the floor of the shelter. So this burial can be seen here, deliberate burial can be seen here. Okay. Moving on. So far we covered different aspects of these. So some ideas that I wanted to provide you here. So let's look at the skull sizes, skull types, how skulls are actually shown in terms of these eye sockets, overall shape of the skulls, Homo sapiens, and look at the brow ridges. You can actually draw this here, like a big eye sockets on top of eye sockets. Brow ridges can be drawn like this in the more primitive ones. Almost till the modern humans, we have seen the brow ridges, bigger brow ridges. Okay, I'll show you one image which might actually show you or give you a glimpse of what we talked today about overall facial changes, because skulls is still a little difficult for us. But if you are able to pick up the differences we talked about, starting from Ardipithecus, we didn't talk, of course, about Ardipithecus, Australopithecus, afarensis, Africanus, Homo habilis, erectus, Neanderthalensis, sapiens. So look at the changes that slightly they became to give rise to Homo sapiens. But overall facial features that we learnt about can be seen here. I'm sure if someone who doesn't believe the evolution, we can show them this. That how much resemblance and gradual change that we see. Afarensis, Africanus, look at the more ape-like facial features. Paranthropus, look at the robustness of Paranthropus. Again, another Paranthropus bozi, robustus. So the humans are apes, definitely have ape-like faces, no doubt about it. Eventually, look at what happened to the noses and the size of the heads. They started showing down, flatterine, started showing the downward facing noses and decrease in this robustness of the face. Okay, Homo habilis, bit of ape-like, but bit of human-like features, mixed features. Then eventually, erectus, heidelbergensis, Rhodesian man, and Neanderthals and Homo sapiens. Do you see how facial features can be clearly used to see this evolution that have happened and core and connection? How gradual changes have led to who we are today. Because it still looks like more traditional man, modern man's. I think I have to put a face of modern man. Right? Okay. So this is briefly about I think we talked about different order of evolution, starting from the Africanus to Australopithecus to Homo sapiens, modern Homo sapiens, and gradual changes. Key points to remember, factual data, but if you know the connections, remembering those 5-6 points, mostly brow ridges, receding forehead or not, prognathism we talked about. So I mean, sometimes depending on what fossil evidence is that we have, height information is there, right? So sometimes canine fossa, the spaces that we have talked about, bun-shaped, the occipital buns that we talked about, sagittal crest we talked about, where thick muscles indicating the diet pattern. Cultures we talked about, burials, and initially tools, and then burials. Then we talked about cannibalism, right? So diet, ideas about diet, meat eaters, usage of fire. So these are all the connecting points that we have to make. specifically for categories, if you remember, if you can write, that will be great. So we know short notes questions are coming on only selected things, right? Australopithecus they talked about initially phylogeny, otherwise they're mostly talking about the other components related to the Homo, like Rhodesian man I've not seen, Homo erectus version that they asked about, Neanderthals they talked about. Okay, so briefly, if you know brief information about characteristics, some fossils, anything known about culture is what we can expect from the 1.0. So read selectively on this. Okay, I hope this explanation I've provided you here is useful. As I promised you, I'm going to provide you some uh, tables for some of these things that where you can actually write and provide ideas. And I'm also looking into sharing some information with respect to drawing the diagrams, drawn diagrams. So far, I've shown you the ideas, but I'm going to show you the give you the drawn diagrams, hints for writing. So do remind me in case if I don't send them in next 1 or 2 days. Do remind me about that. And one thing in the one of these document I'm going to share with you, I think this information is useful to you. That sometimes human migration also you hear about. So where people have come from, where they have migrated from. So this article that came from University of Michigan, this document, that briefly talks about different theories of human migration. Different theories of human migration. Two major theories that they talk about. Okay, one theory, how did early humans colonize the earth? It is explained here, but the concept is simple. So one theory is called out of Africa theory. It's based on the idea that modern Homo sapiens evolved more recently in Africa. So they moved out of Africa after evolution, out of Africa. So they were evolved and more recently they moved out of Africa. Then modern humans radiated out from Africa and spread around the globe. So the image that you see here, they started from Africa, about 100,000 to 150,000 years, slowly started moving to other areas. 50,000 years evidences here, 65,000, 25,000